Amitabha. It's my honor to be with you today and with UNESCO colleagues and all distinguished partners from West Bengal, India, and South Asia. This is a region which has very sweet spot in my heart, as you know very well, because we get inspired a lot by your work, your initiatives. And in fact, that's not only reflected in our kind of everyday work, but actually in our publication also with UNESCO. So I was, dear participants, I was asked today to share with you three things. One is because this year is the year of creative economy. So let's define the creative economy and share with you generally what it is. And secondly is what's the ecosystem, what ecosystem you can put in place as policymakers, as decision makers in urban and rural areas to foster the culture and creative industries, including the intangible culture heritage. And thirdly is to share with you a recent publication that the World Bank and UNESCO have joined force over the last 2 years, inspired by you, to publish a new framework called Cities, Culture, and Creativities to offer you operational guidance on how to foster culture and creative industries as well as intangible culture heritage in a way to achieve the sustainable development goals. So let's go through the slides. I think it's very well known that creative economy is the fastest growing sector in the world economy. It generates income, creates jobs, and brings in export revenues. The culture and creative industries, including intangible culture heritage, contribute annual global revenues of $2.25 trillion every year and exports of over 250 billion. So it is a significant economic sector that unfortunately economists don't talk much about it when they talk about industries, power, agriculture, agribusiness, and so on. But it is a significant employment generating and income generating sector, and especially for young people, the youth and women, as Eric mentioned earlier, the gender dimension of it. And that's why I'm really honored, I'm very pleased to join you today in this discussion. In fact, some recent reports like the Orange Economy Report by UNESCO mentioned that it creates 30 million jobs worldwide. But also we all understand that perhaps if you take India, Sri Lanka, and China alone, this sector has 30 million jobs. But the point about this sector, because it used official statistical analysis, so it does not include or capture secondary jobs and the informal jobs. But most importantly, it employs people aged 15 to 29, and mostly women. As mentioned earlier, at a time of when culture sector has been devastated globally and tourism sector devastated globally by the COVID-19 pandemic, the culture and creative industries have been a global source of jobs and helped world cities and heritage towns and villages to gain and to prove the resilience. Next slide, please. As Amitabha said, I had the honor of being in West Bengal 2 years ago or less, and contributed to this conference. I took this picture while I was sitting on the stage on the right, and I took also this picture on the left when I visited communities which produce this beautiful handicrafts and arts. I learned a lot from contact-based work on Art for Life program or initiative. And I have to say that the culture and creative sector in West Bengal, as well as in your South Asia countries, is a vivid example of the importance of the sector for local economic development, poverty reduction, inclusion, and sustainable development. So if we take the West Bengal, for example, since 2013, as Amitabha said, The West Bengal's Department of Micro, Small, and Medium Enterprises and Textiles in the government of West Bengal has established and been supporting rural crafts and cultural hubs, RCCH. And I think that's a good example, as you will see later, when UNESCO and World Bank talk about this new framework, how this institutional dimension is very important to anchor the cultural and creative industries. And this these hubs have been strengthening the economic livelihood of handicrafts, artisans, and folk artists in rural West Bengal. This also helped to safeguard traditional art and culture and to encourage grassroots micro-entrepreneurship to strengthen artists, and villages. It is remarkable that in this journey, they associated UNESCO's and adopted Art for Life methodology developed by Contact Base, as was mentioned earlier. The dedication of UNESCO's ground partner, Contact Base, bangalanatak.com, is worth special mentioning, I think, as we exchange experiences today, because it brought visible, substantial changes on the ground in alleviating poverty, brought youth back to traditional art practices, transformed marginalized villages into cultural destinations, and addressed the Sustainable Development Goals 1, 5, 8, and 11, which I have seen myself in several locations. And it's also very worth mentioning that the external evaluation report dated February 2020, commissioned by UNESCO's New Delhi office, have documented the impact, very good impacts of this program, and that's why the government has come forward to decide to extend and expand the initiative to reach out to 5,000 artists communities. So let me take you now through the framework. Next slide, please. Next slide. So this is a position paper which UNESCO and World Bank published in May. It's called Cities, Culture and Creativity, Leveraging Culture and Creativity for Sustainable Urban Development and Inclusive Growth. And although it talks about urban development, it actually covers urban and rural areas. Next slide, please. And I encourage you, just search the name of this publication and have a look, because it provides a very good framework for you as policymakers. I think all of you are already familiar with UNESCO's Creative Cities Network and the definition of creative cities. But just before I present the framework for you, let's define creativity or creative cities. These are cities which have effectively enabled culture and creativity, culture and creative industries, or as we will call it CCIs from now on, to contribute to their urban and socio-economic development. So after a lot of discussion between UNESCO, World Bank, and reviewing the literature, we tried to define, okay, what fields we are talking about here. That includes intangible cultural heritage, but also go beyond to the creative economy and culture and creative industries. So it has the audio, visual, and interactive media, whether these are film, TV, streaming, broadcasting, video games. It has also performing arts, which I think very much aligned with in the heart of intangible cultural heritage. It has a whole package of, according to the UNESCO, about intangible cultural heritage, but also it includes, number 4, the literature and press. Number 5, visual arts and crafts, whether these are fine arts, photography, crafts. It includes design and creative services like architecture, vernacular architecture, interior design, advertising, graphic design. And number 7, the heritage and tourism activities, whether these are historical places, tourism attractions, museums, or archaeological sites. So as you see, they build on the intangible cultural heritage in the heart as endowments, but also can include new or modern creative industries. Next, please. So UNESCO and World Bank joined force actually since 2017 in a number of global publications and joint support to go we also published together another framework called Culture in City Reconstruction and Recovery, which looked at post-crisis situations, whether it's post-conflict, post-disasters, and how culture can be in the heart of the recovery and reconstruction process. So that also, if we look at the pandemic as one of the crises, so it's very much aligned of how culture can be in the core, in the heart of the economic recovery of countries. Next, please. So how did we reach to the proposed framework? We did substantial review of all past works, and most notably the Convention on the Protection and Promotion of the Diversity of Cultural Expressions, 2005 by UNESCO, but many other things like Investing in Creativity by UNESCO, Competitive Cities Report, Culture Urban Future, Reshaping Culture Policies, and the Orange Economy Report. These pieces I would encourage all of you to search and read if you would like to use this to enhance or foster the culture and creative industries. We learned from your cases, my experience in West Bengal and visiting many of your countries, but we took 9 cases as in-depth, including Lima, Kyoto, Kobe, Seoul, Madaba, and others. We reviewed many cases also, and you will find them in boxes in the report. We did substantial consultation, including one I had in West Bengal when I was there about 1.5 years ago. And then we had consultation workshops in UNESCO and in the World Urban Forum and so on. Next, please. What are the key findings that I would like to share with you as guiding principles? The creative industries have a strong potential to contribute to spatial, economic, and social development outcomes. And I'd like to remind you of these 3 outcomes because you can see this as a triangle. If we foster the culture and creative industries, we see spatial transformation, we see economic growth and job creation, and we see inclusion in terms of social development outcomes. The culture and creative industries also help drive urban and rural transformation in neighborhoods around the world, new towns around the world, including several examples. It employs people in low and middle income countries. It concentrates in urban and rural villages to address varied local challenges. And it helps these localities to be resilient to economic shocks. Next, please. Here is the framework which I would like to conclude with, to leave it with you to digest and to think about. What we are saying is, in the heart, if you have these endowments, as we call like assets or resources, if in your towns, villages, and cities, you have the skilled artists, you have some creative capital and intangible culture heritage, then you have the more potentials if you induce some support to improve the ecosystem of your local space. Then you can have the 3 outcomes in the outline, the spatial transformation, economic, and social benefits. So let's see what are the enablers then, what you as policymakers need to do to reach from the heart to the outcome, to the 3 outcomes. First, the producers of, can you stay with the framework, please? That's actually my last slide. So if you invest in this regeneration, revitalization of urban and rural areas, you enable productivity, you improve the physical environment for production and reproduction. Second, you need to invest in people. It's people. Invest in skills and innovation and creativity. Third is to invest in social networks as catalyzers and support and provide the microfinance needed for the producers of intangible cultural heritage and creative industries to be able to produce and access market and so on. Number 4 is to have invest in institutions. We have seen in many cities they have like creative council or creative department or the hubs we have seen in West Bengal that I mentioned, I talked about. Invest also in the in business environment, the regulations. And finally, to conclude my speech, you look at the uniqueness of your assets also in the digital transformation. So I will thank you very much for inviting me today. I hope this framework you find useful and you can use in your policies moving forward.